At Mrs. Park's mansion, morning sunlight filtered softly through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the living room. Park Nari sat gracefully in a high-backed chair, her posture regal, fingers drumming lightly on the armrest. From outside came the muted hum of activity. Footsteps, distant voices, the quiet order of a house always ready for command. One of her men stepped forward cautiously. "Madam, the men sent by the Ghost Syndicate have arrived. They're ready to assist Han Minji." Park Nari's eyes flickered with interest, a faint smirk curling at the corner of her lips. She leaned back, crossing her legs with an air of effortless authority. "I see," she murmured. Then her tone sharpened, smooth but edged with steel. "Then this game is finally coming to an end." The man hesitated, sensing the weight behind her calm words. "Shall I prepare anything, madam?" he asked carefully. "No," she replied, eyes narrowing in thought. "Let Han Minji feel the tension before the storm." He bowed deeply and retreated, leaving her alone in the golden light. Park Nari's gaze drifted toward the window, her reflection faintly visible in the glass. A slow, deliberate smile spread across her face. "Han Minji," she whispered, her voice soft but dangerous. "I want to see the expression on your face when you finally meet me again." Her fingers curled around the armrest, as though already gripping the victory she knew would soon be hers. At Lee's mansion, the rhythmic echo of gunfire filled the underground shooting range. The air was thick with gunpowder and focus. Natalia stood firm, her grip steady on the handgun, her eyes locked on the target ahead. Each shot hit close to the bullseye, precise, controlled, and fierce. Lee leaned quietly against the doorway, arms folded, his sharp gaze following her every movement. There was something almost mesmerizing about how serious she looked when she aimed. When she finally lowered the gun to reload, Lee cleared his throat softly. Natalia spun around, a little startled but quickly relaxed when she saw him. "You scared me," she said with a half-smile. He walked toward her slowly, his footsteps echoing faintly in the quiet room. "You were too focused to notice," he replied. "Guess I needed the distraction," she said lightly, trying to sound calm, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of restlessness. Lee stopped right in front of her, then reached out and gently kissed her forehead. "You're anxious, aren't you?" he murmured. Natalia's shoulders tensed slightly before she nodded. "It's been a week," she said softly. "Han Minji hasn't made a single move yet. It's unsettling." Lee's expression darkened slightly as he took the gun from her hand and set it down on the table. "That woman doesn't stay quiet for long," he said firmly. "If she hasn't struck yet, it means she's planning something big." Natalia looked down at her gloves, fiddling with the strap. "That's what scares me. The calm before the storm." Lee tilted her chin up gently, his voice low and reassuring. "Listen, she will make a move this week. I can feel it." Natalia searched his eyes. "And when she does? Then we make ours," he replied simply. "But until then we stay alert. No unnecessary outings, no risks." She nodded, determination replacing her unease. "All right, I'll be ready." Lee gave her a faint smile. "That's my girl." Natalia smirked slightly. "You sound too confident." He chuckled under his breath. "Confidence is what keeps me alive. Or gets you in trouble," she teased, her tone lighter now. Lee glanced at the target behind her, almost all shots near the center. "With aim like that," he said, "I think trouble should be afraid of you." Natalia grinned, loading a fresh magazine. "Then I'll make sure it remembers my name." Lee watched her raise the gun again, his expression softening as the first shot rang out. "Just don't forget," he said quietly, almost to himself. "You're not alone in this." Night fell like a curtain over Han Minji's mansion, the air inside taut with a dangerous thrill. 50 men from the Ghost Syndicate stood in rigid formation on the polished stone, flanked by Minji's own hardened crew, their faces lit by cold floodlights and the pale moon beyond the windows. She moved along the front line with slow, deliberate steps, hands folded behind her back as she surveyed the ranks with a predator's satisfaction. "This is where we will end them," she said, voice low and deadly calm. The words slid through the air like a blade. "Turn this ground into a trap. Cover every angle, every exit. I want no one who comes here to leave alive." Her lieutenants bowed, eyes bright with ruthless eagerness. She turned to Choi, the planner at her side, and nodded once. "Send the coordinates to those fools," she ordered, a cruel smile tightening her mouth. "Let them come charging in, believing they're the heroes. We will welcome them and bury them." Choi's hand flew to his phone. Within moments the coordinates were sent. As her men dispersed to prepare the battlefield, Minji lingered under the stark light, closed her eyes for a heartbeat, and whispered to the empty hall. "Let them come. I will feast on their courage." Jihoon and Marie arrived at Lee's compound as night swallowed the city's edges. They'd come straight after receiving the coordinates from Choi. The gate eased open like a drawn breath. Inside, the atmosphere was taut. Everyone moved with the practiced calm of people who trusted little and prepared for everything. Natalia stared at the printed location on the table and folded it. "This reeks of an ambush," she said, the warning flat in her voice. Lee met her eyes without flinching. "Of course it is," he replied. "But waiting lets her choose the terms. We go on our terms." Jihoon set his jaw, voice low and measured. "She's desperate enough to try to bury us there. We can't underestimate what she's willing to do." They shared a tight nod. Lee turned to his men with the precision of a commander. "Gear up." The men dispersed immediately. Lee walked back to Natalia and held out a small matte black tracker. "Keep this at all times," he instructed. "If you're separated, I'll find you." Natalia clipped it to her belt. Their fingers brushed for an instant. "I'll keep it on," she promised, smile brief but steady. Within 10 minutes, the convoy of black SUVs rolled out into the night. That night in the penthouse, the laptop's glow painted the room as the IT specialist hunched over a keyboard, scanning feeds and cross-referencing signals until he found the pattern he'd been hunting. He straightened, voice urgent but controlled. "Got them. The syndicate operatives are holed up at the Park Estate," he said, sliding a live map across the screen for Sangwoo and Vanessa to see. Vanessa's face lit with a fierce grin. "Finally," she breathed, then turned serious. "Load the gear. We move now." Sangwoo didn't hesitate. He barked precise orders, calm and efficient. "Carter, take point with the breachers. Mina, you and Jay handle Overwatch." The IT specialist placed a set of encrypted coordinates in Sangwoo's hand. "Their comms are minimal and heavily routed, but I can hold a tap for 30 minutes. After that, they'll know we're in the area." He met Sangwoo's eyes. "You get one clean window." Vanessa slung her pack over her shoulder, adrenaline barely contained. "Let's end this tonight," she said, voice steady. Within seconds they were on the road, tires cutting through the night toward the Park Mansion. The convoy of black SUVs came to a halt at the foot of the Park Mansion's hill, engines humming low in the night. A cold wind threaded through the trees, and the silence was heavy enough to make Natalia's pulse thrum. Lee stepped out first, scope trained on the mansion. Nothing moved, too quiet, too still. He gave a silent hand signal. "Advance. Stay sharp." Jihoon and Marie mirrored the command to their units. Boots pressed into gravel. Guns rose. The front gate creaked open like a mouth revealing the beast within. Lights flickered faintly inside. Then chaos. Grenades arced from the shadows. Smoke and fire erupted everywhere. Gunfire ripped through the night. Screams followed as bodies hit the ground. One of Lee's men went down instantly. Marie dropped behind a stone pillar and fired without hesitation. "Ambush!" Lee roared, hauling Natalia into cover as bullets ricocheted off the iron gate, sparks spitting. "Form a defense line." Jihoon's voice thundered over the din, "Push forward. Don't give them ground." He sprinted between covers, his pistol snapping precise shots that cut through the smoke. Natalia flanked to the right, sliding across wet grass and taking down 2 attackers trying to breach from the side. The enemy kept coming. Syndicate men, ruthless, trained to die before surrendering, hurled another wave of grenades. The courtyard lit with explosions like lightning. Several of Jihoon's men were blown off their feet. "We're surrounded," Marie shouted, reloading beside Jihoon. "We hold the line," he snarled, firing with his uninjured hand. "No one retreats." Lee dove for cover near Natalia, then froze. An enemy gunman had Natalia in his sights. Instinct took over. "Natalia!" he yelled, shoving her to the ground as a bullet screamed past and grazed his arm. She gasped. "Lee, are you hurt?" "Just a scratch," he grunted, smiling through the pain. She rose, cold and lethal, and finished the gunman with a clean headshot. Smoke and gunpowder hung thick in the air. Lee's men and Marie's unit fought like cornered wolves, but their numbers were thinning. Then the distant hum of engines sliced through the chaos. Natalia looked up. "Who?" Black-clad figures stormed through the broken gate, the International Task Force. Their entrance was surgical, swift, precise. Sangwoo and Vanessa led them, firing in unison and cutting down 2 syndicate operatives before they could react. "Need a hand?" Sangwoo yelled, sliding into cover beside Jihoon. "About damn time." Jihoon smirked despite the chaos. Vanessa took position near Natalia, movements sharp and efficient. We'll cover your flank. Move up. Reinforced, the team pushed forward, bullets raining from every shadow. The enemy's morale cracked, only to be replaced by a fiercer, angrier desperation. Ghost Syndicate men fought with suicidal ferocity to avoid capture. One lunged at Marie with a knife. She sidestepped, twisted his arm, and drove a bullet through his skull without hesitation. Jihoon turned to cover her, then a sniper's round tore through his shoulder. Jihoon! Marie screamed, catching him as he dropped to one knee. Through clenched teeth he said, "I'm fine, stay in cover." But Marie was gone already, fury blazing. She rose, unleashed controlled hell, emptying her rifle into the attackers. Each shot precise, each kill a statement. "You picked the wrong people to mess with," she roared, cutting down 5 in seconds. "They're pulling more from the east wing." Vanessa shouted between reloads. Lee's jaw tightened. "Then we finish this before they regroup. Everyone, push forward." The mansion grounds erupted into a storm of bullets, smoke, and blood. A night where alliances were tested and vengeance burned hotter than fear. Night tightened its grip on Minji's mansion as Park Nari and her contingent slipped through the perimeter like ghosts. Her men fanned out, engaging anyone still holding ground and slowly turning the tide. 5 of her most trusted stayed close, trailing her silently through the maze of East Wing corridors, each passage darker than the last. In a hidden hallway, the mole who'd infiltrated Minji's inner circle awaited, guiding Nari closer to the confrontation she had planned for years. Minji's once formidable guards were neutralized swiftly and precisely by Nari's team, moves executed without hesitation. Nari stepped into the room where Minji waited. Minji froze, disbelief and fury colliding on her face. "You were supposed to be dead that night," she spat. Nari's lips curved into a cold, calculating smirk. "I didn't die, honey. I survived. My men found me before yours finished the job," she replied, voice low and controlled. The revelation hit Minji like a blow. Her anger flared. "Well, it doesn't matter. Today you will truly die," she hissed, signaling her men to strike with poison darts. To her astonishment, the men stayed where they were. Park Nari's laugh echoed off the walls, sharp, triumphant. "My dear, most of your men came from my end years ago. I placed them where it would matter," she said, cold and unyielding. The words fell like a blade. Minji went momentarily speechless as the weight of betrayal settled in. Nari closed the distance, voice low and deadly. "Do you think I wouldn't prepare when I want revenge? I didn't realize you were already a criminal when I first met you." The confession stung. Minji's face burned with anger. Then, with a voice raw from years of memory, Minji answered in a rush, pain, pride, and hatred braided together. "Do you know how I lived under a drunk father who beat me for no reason and a mother who never cared? It was hell. I set our house on fire. They died. And just when I thought I could survive, you came and shoved your wealth at me." Minji's eyes blazed with fury, her voice trembling with years of buried resentment. "Did you think it was great living under you, Nari? It wasn't," she shouted. "Anything I had, anything, I was told it was because of you. Everyone said I was lucky to be your friend. I hated that. I hated you. Why did you get to be rich while I had to crawl through filth just to survive?" Before Nari could answer, Minji lunged forward, dagger flashing under the dim light. Her movements were desperate, feral. But Nari was faster. She reached for a gun from one of her men and fired. The gunshot cracked through the air. But Mr. Choi threw himself in front of her, the bullet tearing through his chest. He stumbled, blood spilling across the marble floor. "Run! Madam!" he gasped, collapsing in a pool of crimson. For a heartbeat, even Minji froze, stunned by his sacrifice. Then the silence shattered again as Nari raised her gun once more. This time steady, deliberate. The bullet hit Minji's leg. She screamed, crumpling to the ground, the dagger skittering out of her reach. Nari stepped forward, her heels echoing like thunder in the still hall. Her face was calm, her tone almost conversational. "My dear, how does it feel?" Minji groaned, dragging herself toward a fallen gun, but Nari kicked it aside and crouched beside her. She twirled the weapon lazily between her fingers. "The way I wanted to torture you before killing you would have been perfect," Nari said softly, almost wistfully. "But that's not what my husband would have wanted." Minji coughed, blood staining her lips. "Then satisfy my curiosity," she rasped. Her trembling hand reached into her pocket and pulled out a small seal. She held it up weakly. "Which identity does this seal hold?" For the first time, something flickered in Nari's expression. Pain, memory, truth. "This seal," she said slowly, is my identity as the daughter of the most powerful family in South Korea. I had it with me when I was adopted in London. Minji's eyes widened, disbelief flooding her features. You found them? Nari nodded. Yes. My investigations confirmed that I went missing when I was 3 years old. The day you tried to kill me was the day I had finally been accepted by my real family. That trip wasn't just business. It was the beginning of my recognition. The realization broke something in Minji. She gave a small, bitter laugh that turned into a choked sob. So I didn't take everything you had after all, she whispered. Nari's gaze softened, not with pity but with finality. End it, Minji said, voice cracking. End it now. The final shot echoed through the hall. Nari stood still for a long moment, the scent of gunpowder mingling with silence. Then she exhaled slowly, lowering the gun. Looking down at her fallen enemy, she spoke softly, almost like a benediction. I hope you are born into a kind home in your next life. Assist our allies, she ordered her men. End this war. Her men moved out swiftly, their footsteps fading into the distance, and Park Nari stood alone amid the ghosts of vengeance, closing the chapter that had haunted them all for years. The aftermath of the battle was grim. Smoke still curled from the shattered walls, and the acrid tang of gunpowder hung heavy in the air. Most of the syndicate's men and Han Minji's remaining forces were either incapacitated or fled in chaos. Silence settled over the mansion, broken only by distant groans and the occasional crackle of fire. Lee's sharp eyes scanned the scene, frustration furrowing his brow as he noticed movement in a shadowed hallway. How many men does the witch have left? Natalia asked, her voice calm but alert, scanning the darkened corridors. Before anyone could respond, a group of disciplined men emerged, moving with lethal precision. Within moments, the last pockets of Minji's forces and syndicate remnants were neutralized, leaving no one alive to sow further chaos. The fight ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving a haunting stillness in its wake. From the smoke and shadows, Park Nari appeared, her posture composed, her steps measured, carrying the quiet confidence of someone who had faced death and returned stronger. Shock rippled through the group at the sight of her. Jihoon broke the silence first. I heard you died years ago, in that road accident. Nari's lips curved into a faint, knowing smirk. Well, I didn't, she said, amusement threading her voice. Lee stepped forward, the question on everyone's minds pressing on him. Did you kill Minji? Yes, Nari replied simply, her gaze steady, unflinching. Turning her attention to Natalia, Nari approached with a softness that belied her recent ferocity. She pulled Natalia into a warm embrace, her voice gentle yet filled with meaning. My husband truly adopted the daughter I always wanted, she said. Natalia laughed, feeling the tension in her shoulders melt for the first time in days. When they released the hug, Nari's eyes softened further. Call me Mum, she prompted. I will, Natalia said, her voice tender, sincere. Nari's gaze then shifted to Lee, sharp but playful. Should you ever hurt her and break her heart, Adrian Lee, I will kill you myself, she warned lightly. Lee chuckled, lifting his hands in mock surrender. It would never happen, he assured her. Turning to Sangwoo, Vanessa, and their team, Nari's expression radiated gratitude. Thank you for your assistance, she said. Sangwoo shook his head, composed yet proud. It was our duty to eliminate the syndicate's men, he replied, eyes steady. With order restored, Park Nari and her men disappeared into the night, leaving behind the faint echo of their presence. Sangwoo, Vanessa, and their team bid their farewells before heading out, followed by Jihoon, Marie, and their remaining men. Soon, only Lee, Natalia, and their trusted allies remained. Lee turned to Natalia, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. He drew her into his arms, whispering, Miss Beautiful, I can finally marry you. Natalia's eyes sparkled, her heart full, and she smiled back, knowing this victory, both over their enemies and for their future, was truly theirs. A week later, Natalia arrived at her adopted mother's residence, her steps light and unhurried as she made her way down the sunlit hallway. The air was calm, carrying the faint scent of fresh flowers and polished wood. Hyunwoo was already there. When his eyes met hers, the words seemed to escape him for a moment. His gaze lingered, a mixture of surprise, relief, and something deeper hidden behind the restraint he usually wore. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and earnest. I'm sorry, Natalia. I'm sorry for being a jerk, for not being a good brother to you. Natalia's lips curved into a warm smile, softening the tension that had lingered between them for so long. I'm glad you've changed, Hyunwoo, she said gently, her tone affectionate yet steady. It was as if the weight of old grievances had dissolved in that moment, leaving only understanding. Hyunwoo hesitated, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Can I hug you? He asked quietly. Without a word, Natalia opened her arms. He stepped forward, and the embrace they shared was simple yet profound, filled with forgiveness, relief, and the quiet warmth of reconnection. From a few steps away, Park Nari watched the scene unfold, a soft, approving smile playing on her lips. She approached them with measured steps, her presence steady and comforting. Without hesitation, she wrapped her arms around both of them, her voice rich with pride and gentle amusement. Now this is how siblings should behave, she said warmly. All three of them laughed together, the sound light and unburdened. 3 months later, sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows of a grand church, scattering vibrant colors across the polished marble floor. Lee stood at the altar, flanked by Jihoon and Hyunwoo, his hands lightly clasped as he watched Natalia approach, Park Nari by her side. Natalia's eyes sparkled with a mix of excitement and nervous anticipation, while Park Nari's gaze was calm, protective, and full of pride. As they reached the altar, Park Nari gently rested a hand on Natalia's shoulder. Take care of her, she said, her voice firm yet tender. Lee met her gaze and gave a reassuring smile, his thumb brushing against her hand. I promise, she's safe with me, he replied. Jihoon stepped forward, his expression serious, almost comically intense. Lee, if anything happens to Natalia, I swear you'll regret it. Hyunwoo mirrored the threat, fists lightly clenched. Lee's lips curved into an amused grin, meeting their concern with unwavering confidence. I understand, guys, he said evenly. Nothing will happen to her. You have my word. Both nodded solemnly before stepping aside. The pastor began the ceremony, his voice echoing through the soaring halls. Vows were exchanged, hearts laid bare, and every word was met with hushed reverence from the congregation. When the pastor finally pronounced them husband and wife, Lee swept Natalia into a deep, passionate kiss. Cheers erupted, laughter and applause filling the church, while Marie tossed a cascade of petals over them. They fell like slow-motion confetti, decorating the moment with joy. Hours later, the newlyweds stepped onto a private jet, the doors closing behind them with a soft thud. Lee guided Natalia into her seat, holding her hand gently. Their eyes met, full of shared excitement and quiet contentment. Next stop, Bahamas, he said, a playful grin spreading across his face. Natalia leaned against him, a soft laugh escaping her lips. I can't wait. Lee squeezed her hand, his voice low and warm. Neither can I. The jet roared to life, engines humming with power, and lifted smoothly into the sky. That night, moonlight spilled softly through the open curtains of the private beach house in the Bahamas, painting the room in silvery hues. The faint, rhythmic murmur of the waves drifted through the air, blending with the quiet rhythm of their footsteps as Lee and Natalia entered the spacious living room. Before Natalia could speak, Lee drew her close, his hands cupping her face with gentle authority. He kissed her deeply, deliberately, as if sealing every promise he'd ever made to her. Natalia melted into his touch, the warmth of the moment wrapping around them like the ocean breeze drifting in from the shore. When they finally parted, their breaths mingling, Lee's eyes locked onto hers, intense, tender, and full of unspoken emotion. Without hesitation, he lifted her into his arms and carried her toward the bedroom. Natalia's cheeks flushed, her fingers tracing the collar of his shirt as he laid her down with careful reverence. He paused above her, studying the woman who had transformed his life. Then, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead, he whispered, Mrs. Lee, I promise you, I'm going to love you and protect you for the rest of my life. Natalia's heart fluttered at the sincerity in his voice. A soft smile curved her lips as she replied, barely above a whisper, and I'll hold you to that promise. Lee chuckled, a low, warm sound, before closing the distance between them again. His lips found hers in a kiss that lingered, slow and consuming, a reflection of the life they would now share. Outside, the waves continued their endless song, a gentle witness to their union, as night wrapped around them. 1 year later, the Lee mansion basked in the soft glow of morning sunlight. Natalia sat on the couch, gently rocking her 3-month-old baby girl in her arms. The little one cooed softly, her tiny fingers curling around Natalia's with innocent trust. It was Natalia's birthday, though she hadn't expected much. Yet the day already felt special, quiet, warm, and filled with the kind of joy that didn't need extravagance. Suddenly, the front door opened, and familiar footsteps echoed through the hall. Hyunwoo stepped in first, Sumin at his side, both wearing bright, affectionate smiles. "We came early," Hyunwoo said, arms wide as he enveloped Natalia in a hug. "Couldn't miss your special day." Natalia's smile broadened, her heart lifting. "I'm glad you're here," she replied softly. Moments later, Jihoon and Marie arrived. Marie's eyes sparkled the instant she saw the baby. "Come here, little princess," she said, stretching out her arms eagerly. Natalia carefully placed her daughter into Marie's embrace. The baby giggled, reaching for Marie's necklace, and Marie laughed, delighting in the tiny hand that clung to her. "She loves me more every time," Marie teased, her voice full of warmth. The house filled with laughter and light, every corner echoing with the simple joy of family together. Finally, the door opened once more. Mrs. Park entered, her presence graceful and serene, followed closely by Lee. Her heart swelling as her mother wrapped her in a warm, steady embrace. Lee stepped forward, his gaze soft and tender. He slipped an arm around Natalia's waist, leaning in to press a gentle kiss to her forehead. "Happy birthday, beautiful," he murmured. Natalia looked up at him, her eyes shimmering. "Thank you," she whispered. Her baby giggled from Marie's arms again, tiny laughter ringing through the room like chimes in the sun. And in that moment, the mansion felt full of life, full of love, and full of peace. Thank you so much for watching all the episodes of Seoul Vendetta. Your love, support, and engagement have meant the world throughout this journey. I hope you enjoyed every twist, emotion, and moment of the story. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more amazing stories coming your way. Until next time, stay inspired and stay tuned.